Hello, everybody. Welcome to Short Stories, where I get into the minds of inspiring photographers and try to get insights on how they go about taking their shots. We also have a new photo sharing community on shortstories.co. Our goal is to create a photography community that is based on mindful principles. In today's social media world, many of us are sucked into using platforms that promote anxiety with an obsessive focus on things like likes and follow accounts. And I think that we photographers deserve a better, more well thought out platform, a more inspiring community for us to live in. And if that resonates with you, come join us at shortstories.co. Today we have with us Scott Neylon. Scott specializes in macro photography, and his insect images are vivid, colorful, and just plain gorgeous. He focuses mainly on jumping spiders and insects. He says that his goal is to feature the unseen beauty of these little animals that most of us take for granted. When I first saw Scott's photos, my initial reaction was, wow, there's this whole world out there that we completely don't pay attention to in our day-to-day lives. And so, Scott's work has been featured on BBC Earth, and he's been published on the Chiiz magazine. And I'm very much looking forward to this conversation and hope that you are going to get some insights about macro photography. Scott and I share something in common as well. We are both from, he's from Tempe, Arizona, and that's where I went to school at ASU. And it's always nice to meet fellow Arizonans. Scott, thanks for being here. And let me start by asking you, how did you get into macro photography and specifically shooting insects?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It's quite a pleasure to be here and to discuss macro photography and moreover even insects. I mean, it's something I'm pretty passionate about. Really, photography itself started to take shape with me as I began to go the corporate route in my profession. I'm a chef, and I got into cooking because of the creative side of it. Once I started to go the more corporate route, things are less creative. So I still needed that outlet. I started to look at photography because that was something that I could design an image like in my head, like I was designing a plate. And through that, I was like, started to read and watch videos and learn more about photography. And then that's when I discovered, I saw a picture of a jumping spider in a macro setup, and I just couldn't believe the details or how cool this little tiny spider was. And I'm like a lot of people where you see a spider, you instantly think it's venomous and it's gonna kill you. So I was always a little bit nervous when it came to spiders, but now spiders in itself are like mostly what I'm fascinated with, because you come to find out there's very few that can actually harm you. Most of them are harmless. And then through macro, it brings these details out that you had no idea even existed. And with that, that's what pursued me to just dive down the rabbit hole.
I hope you didn't find your spider in your food, did you?
No, but they do come in my house. Like that's another thing too. Like now that it's getting cold, they come inside, and if they come inside, I have little enclosures. I'll keep them. I give them water, I give them food, and then every once in a while, I might take the camera out and have a little photo shoot.
So, where do you find these insects? When you want to shoot, and where that you can predictably find your subject matter. Where do you go to find them?
Mainly, it's in my yard. So, especially nowadays with the corona and the lockdown, and I used to go to a lot of like public gardens and like protected wildlife reserves and stuff where it was mainly about the protected environment, but there would be a lot of people. So the past year, it's been in my front yard, my backyard. There's a few places that I shoot a lot at night because I told you earlier I had to work at 1, so I'll get off tonight. And if it was a nice night, there's a few places that I would stop. I do a lot of shooting that night as well. But it's just I'll go to a spot where there's almost always something. I mean, it's an insect. That's the thing is I can't really go out with one particular insect in mind that I'm looking for. You like never find it. So I just go out with a mind like, hey, I want to shoot. I want to find something. And then you just try to get the best shot with whatever you find.
And is there a particular time of the day that works best for this kind of photography?
There is a particular time of day that works best for specific things. Things that are very fast or fly, take for instance the dragonfly. They're the fastest flying insect. So a dragonfly, the best time to get them is before the sun comes up. And a lot of the small creatures that are moving around before the sun comes up, they're still slow. So you can catch a dragonfly that perhaps has dew on it, or they're still, they're not moving, and they'll allow you to get really close. And the flash can fire a couple times, and then as soon as the sun comes up, they heat up and they're gone. And that's the same for a lot. So some things, a lot of moths are nocturnal. A lot of wolf spiders are nocturnal. So I'll find those at night.
I see. So what about if you don't have a backyard, or like if I'm living in an apartment, I don't really see a lot of, I do get bugs at home, but where would I go to find these interesting kind of bugs?
So one of the things that I brought up is I do a lot of night shooting, and I have two spots that are at the end of my street, and they're the parking lot of a church. And the reason why I like them is because they have lights in the parking lot. For one, it gives me a sense of safety. So there's lights around. I'm not like walking through the woods at night by myself. I can park my car. I'm not worried about that. But the lights in the parking lot tend to draw the attention of insects. So a lot of insects I'll find around the light. But if there's any type of grass or any type of wooded area around, that's one church is like my favorite spot at night. I park there and I find wolf spiders, moths all the time, a lot of different beetles, and it's just at a church parking lot.
What do you use to shoot macro? Like what do you have to use a tripod?
No, no. Everything I do is handheld. I don't bring a my whole thing is I'm very minimalist. I don't like to bring a lot of stuff with me. I usually wear cargo shorts. It's essentially, I bring a flashlight. I got a little battery pack that I have flash batteries, camera batteries. I got a wiping cloth and an extra SD card. Those are in my pocket. At night, there's a headlamp that I can put on, and yeah, that's it. I use an Olympus camera, so it's very light, and it's just handheld. I got a hand strap that I put on, and I do everything. So when you need to do something that requires a lot of stabilization, I brace myself somehow. So if wolf spiders, for instance, are on the ground, I'll lay down on the ground. I'll use my elbows as like a tripod. I hold my camera, and if the interesting thing about this light is this part lights up, so I can stand the light up off into the distance, so I can get a focusing light. Because a lot of times the headlamp doesn't always do it. So I got this one so I can set it up and get some backlighting, or that'll also free up a hand where I can hold a leaf behind to try to get a background. But I'll use my elbows, and I'll be laying on the ground. If I'm standing up, I'll try to lean against the tree or lean against a wall. A lot of insects will like a long surface. So if there's a fence around, you can find insects on a fence, especially like the predators. They like a hunting ground that's flat and level. So spiders are always on like some sort of fence. And then the other thing too is you always got to be observant and just like try to remember what's going on, because you'll see things that are similarities. So that's the other thing too. Even if I don't find something, you're still looking. I'm always looking.
So how do you get these colors?
Okay, so the one with the yellow background, that's 2 steps out of my front door. I have a potted plant. They're mums and they're yellow. So in the fall, we had 2 pots that had yellow mums that were coming into bloom. I walked outside. I was going to my car to go to work, and I saw the beetle was on the pot. I put a stick down next to him. He got on the stick, and then I raised the stick. And yeah, I just took the stick and moved it right in front of the flowers and snapped a picture.
Do they stay put, or do they tend to fly around? Is it easy to?
Well, I mean, again, it's in the fall, so it was a little bit cold, and he stayed like that for me to get a nice shot. He did later spread his wings and fly, and I don't know if I posted that one on ShotStories, but it's kind of a long beetle, so when it opened its wings to go, it's kind of an awkward framing. I'm not sure if I posted that one or not.
So what are your camera settings here? Like,
so this, I don't vary off a whole lot of settings too often. I mean, this with my 60mm macro, it's at f8, 1/160th of a second, and my ISO was 100. I almost always stay at 100 for ISO just because it allows the sharpest details. I will occasionally go to 200 if it's a little bit dark, but like I said, if it's dark, I got my flashlight, my headlight.
That's interesting that you're on f8, because I actually thought it's more like f2 or something because of that isolation. Is there a reason that you are on f8, and is that like the recommended?
No, there's really no recommended f-stop. I try to go with as high of an f-stop as possible to keep as much of the insect in focus.
Okay.
With macro photography, for me, I always try to get as much detail as possible. So I start with the eyes, make sure the eyes are in focus, and then if I can get up to a larger f-stop and the light will allow it, it'll just let more of the body be in focus.
And are you using are you using the autofocus on your camera, or are you manually focusing?
So that's actually pretty funny. I know a lot of macro photographers that only do manual. I do both. So I have a setting on my camera that's manual and auto. It's MF/AF, and the main reason is I wear glasses, and a lot of times I can't quite exactly tell, or I'm afraid it's going to move. So I use autofocus at first, and it'll lock on, but then it'll allow me to move. So if the insect moves, I can move with it, and I use both. But people kind of give me a hard time for still using manual the autofocus.
What you said you use an Olympus. What's the model?
It's a EM5 Mark II.
Okay, and what lenses do you use?
I have one lens for that camera, and it's the 60mm macro. That's it. The Olympus camera is my macro rig.
So you use your 60mm for every shot of yours? Yep. Is there anything, like I know a lot of photographers who start out with photography, they want everything out there, right? They want all the zoom. And do you have any advice for photographers who are thinking, what lens should I get? Should I get that 18 to 200 lens? And I see that a lot of photographers, they want everything up front. So what do you have to say?
That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to have the best pictures up front right away either. You have to learn your system, and the more you get familiar with your system and you learn what works best for you, then you can start adapting them. Yet I do think the lens is the most important thing when it comes to the kind of image that you need. But I think more importantly is your system. Now I could still, now that I've been doing it, I can do a reverse lens. I can take a kit lens and reverse it and still get good quality because I'm really familiar with my camera now. I could use a different focal length of a macro lens. It's the most important thing for me is to get to know your system and to get to know your subjects. Like I said earlier, I do a lot of observing. So you start to learn their behavior. And when you add that with a comfortability with your camera, you're going to get some images that you can be proud of.
And how do you know the names of these insects? Do you have to reference a book?
My phone. It's a lot of Google. I wish there was a better book that I could reference, but when you think, like for instance, a jumping spider, I think there's 53,000 different species of jumping spiders. So things different in different regions, so much. Like Jumping spiders I have in Virginia, you don't have in California, even though we're in the same country. And America is so big that it's hard to have something. So if you look for a book, you'll find something like beetles of the Northwest or beetles of it's a specific region. So for me, I always got my phone with me. I can do a quick Google search. Google even has a thing now where if you take a picture of it, it'll help you identify it. It might not
Image
get down to the
recognition.
species, but it can start with what it is.
Is it
And a
pretty
lot of stuff,
accurate?
it'll get you in the ballpark. But
Okay.
then that some things they're so difficult to identify that I don't keep going. It's just if I have a ballpark of what it is, I'm okay with it because it'll just require too much time, and I'd rather be taking pictures.
And are you on aperture priority
No,
mode?
manual.
You're
Yeah,
manual.
I
Okay.
stay in manual mode, and again, that's because then when I do want to make changes, I can, and it's just a quick click of the finger, and I can change f-stops or shutter speeds. It's just really fast.
So shall we talk about your process, like from top to bottom? So let's say you go out to your yard and you spot an insect. What are the first things that you do?
If it's something super common, if it's like a ladybug, I might pass it by. I might see what else can I find. A lot of times, it's not a rush to get in. If the sun is up, usually a shadow will scare it away. So I might like take my hand and put a shadow on it to see what it reacts. If it takes off, it takes off, and I keep looking. If you put a shadow on it and it doesn't move, that's when I'll start to move in closer. And I'll get my camera up and I'll just begin to move in. A lot of insects, when they see your eyes, they're gone. So another bonus to having the big diffuser is that's not very scary when it's coming at you if you're an insect.
So
So
is that pointed from the front
yes,
towards the insect? Okay.
that's what they see when they're coming at them. So and you just move slow, and I get close. I always try to get like a shot where a portrait shot. So if they're moving around, I'll take a shot and see if the lighting is okay. If mainly for that, is the lighting correct? Then I'll try to be patient and wait for them to turn and look at me. The idea usually is a portrait shot, but then I also like to take a few dorsal shots or side shots. That helps with identification. If it's something that's very cooperative, like when that first picture you showed me with the beetle, I got it on a stick. Now that it's on the stick, I can then put it to a colorful background. I can try to compose an image that's eye-catching. Instead, a lot of times with macro photography, it's a black background, and I love the isolation, but I also love colorful images too. So I'll hold it up to try to get a nice isolation shot with a black background, and then I'll look for something. My wife's car is red. I'll put it in front of the car, or
So
hold
you
it up towards the sky and get a blue background, like the yellow flowers. I put it in front of that, and then you get a couple shots. You put them back where you got them, and you move on to the next one. It's really the thrill of the hunt. A lot of times you can just take a stick. If you put it by, they will step on it. Once they're on it, if they don't fly away and they're there, then you can be like, oh, I got a blue background here, so try to get a shot with something like that. Mainly it's the flowers. I want it to try to look natural. So if there's in fall, it's great. The leaves change colors. A lot of times I'll just pick up a leaf and I'll hold the leaf behind it. The thing though is a stick, because I always have a stick with me.
Okay, and they don't. I'm just surprised that usually there's a bug at home and I have to take it off. They always like fly around. So what's the success rate? Like how often do they stick onto the stick? And
Not often. It's just like that. You have to, when you get something that cooperates, you got to exploit the situation. Like for instance, the one on the with the yellow background, the yellow flowers. As soon as it got on the stick, I was like, all right. And then you just got to act quick. All right, there's the yellow flowers right there. I took a shot. I held it away from and I got it so there was a black background. And then my pot is blue, so I tried to get it by the pot. And once I bent down towards the pot, then I saw he was starting to move around like he was going to fly. I stood up and he flew off. but the background was kind of gray white. It wasn't tremendously impressive. It was just more about the fact that he opened his wings.
What's interesting about your photography is that even though you are placing the insects in like these interesting backgrounds, like flowers or your red car, it's impossible to tell what it is. It's like, it's just color. You're just using that for color, right?
Right.
There's no information of what it is in the background.
Yeah, and it's good, I guess. I mean, it doesn't distract from the subject, in my opinion. It's eye-catching, but not distracting. But there's times when I want to frame up something where it's like all about the composure, and then it's different.
And what about the flash power? Like, are you on like the highest setting, or you tone it down a little bit?
Yeah, it's down a lot. I usually am at a quarter power on my flash, and then a lot of times I'll take it down to like 1/8 power. I usually am right at a quarter power, and then if you turn the dial, it'll go to like a plus 0.03 or a minus 0.03. It's usually right around there, quarter power. But that's so the flash isn't harsh, and then it can also recycle faster. If it's not on full power, it'll recycle a lot faster.
Okay, so do you first take a shot without the flash on?
No, always flash.
No, but to get your lighting right, how do you know what power to be on? And
like when I was saying, when I find something, I'll take an initial shot. It's not always the best compose or whatever, but that's to see, is my flash power right? Is my f-stop right? And then I can make adjustments really quick and then fire again.
They're also good. It's tough to pick.
Thank you.
Is that the red car in the back?
No, that was
how do you get the red?
So I told you before that a lot of times I'll hold a leaf. That's like a super red, yellow leaf that had fallen down. Just held it up behind it. The autumn is, I don't like going into winter. I like being outside and taking pictures. Fall is the end, the beginning of the end of the macro season. So it's always bittersweet, but the colors are by far the best. And so when I go out, I tend to look like, where's a big leaf? Where's a stick? And then I'll bring those with me. And I try to look for something that's like yellow and brown, or the red and the yellows. And that's really it. So like this picture that you're showing right now, there's the red leaf behind it, and it's on a brown leaf that had fallen on the ground. I just picked them up.
It looks like a fallen leaf, and you placed it. And then what about the red part over here? Where does that come from?
Another leaf. So I can remember, a lot of times I'm laying down. So I'll put the leaf on something as the background, and I'll hold the other leaf. So I don't hold the background. I'll hold the leaf that it's on, and I take a picture.
It looks like this one has like 4 eyes. Are those all eyes?
Yeah. So wow. This is a type of jumping spider, and they're known for their 2 large eyes in the front, but the spiders, almost all spiders have 8 eyes. So if he was to put his head down, you could see other ones on top. But the jumping spider itself, they have the best eyesight in the spider kingdom, and it's because of those 2 large eyes in the front.
Do they ever jump on you?
All the time. Jump on my camera, jump on my lens, on my diffuser. There's times I get home and there's one on my arm, like all the time.
But you said most of them are not poisonous, right?
Not at all. And they're so small, like they could, they're so small, I'm not even afraid of what happens if they bite. I know they're not going to hurt me, but they're so small. And there's times when I get them with their fangs open, and they're relatively big, like to the size of their head, and they look vicious, but they're not going to do anything.
Some people are allergic to spiders, right? And what if they are wondering, how do I know which spider is harmless and which one is not? Again,
I do a lot of Google search in the field. Like if I take a couple of pictures, then I'll try to use that, and I use my location too. So I'll be like, for instance, this one, if I wanted to find it, I'd be like, okay, it's a brown jumping spider in Virginia, and see what comes up. And then you look at the images and see what's close. And if you find that it's close, then you can, a lot of times, Wikipedia will come up, or iNaturalist, or there's a bugguide.net, and they'll tell you, and you can just say, is this spider harmful to humans? They're all venomous, but are they harmful to humans? And usually the answer is no.
Well, that looks almost like is that a cockroach?
No,
Beetle. It's a beetle.
It's a type of beetle, yeah. And that was on my phone.
This on your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, the bottom part is your phone is reflecting off,
Yep.
off of your phone, basically. So you have to be innovative in your environment, right? Like where to place them. That's the key in getting interesting shots with insects.
Yeah. I mean, you got to find the ones that are cooperative, and more times than not, they aren't cooperative. A lot of times they don't want to be bothered, and you can tell if you come around and they go, I don't chase after things very long. I get discouraged, but more importantly, I don't want them to be in distress. If they're not cooperative, they're not cooperative, and I just move on.
Yeah. This one has a beard. Is that a beard?
No, but so you can see he's starting to open his fangs up a little bit. I'm so bad with the names, but this is a part of the spider where his fangs are kept, and it's just because it's a wolf spider. They're known for being hairy, and that part of them, I can't remember the name of it, the Latin name of it. It just has a lot. He's got a lot of hair. And again, this one was at the church that I was telling you about, and it was at night. This was after work. It was probably like 11:30, midnight, around there. I set my light there because it was at night. I approached real slow, and I'm laying down maybe 2 centimeters once away from it. Fired, got up, and left. The interesting thing about the wolf spider is he also has these large eyes, right? So when I shine my light, I scan my light across the grass. The light reflects back, and you can see where they are.
Do you use those lights when you're shooting your picture as well?
Well, yeah, because I'll stand it up. So I'll turn it on and stand it up so I can get a focusing light. At night, you need something where your camera will focus. Otherwise, if you don't have some sort of light, it won't focus.
So let's say you're shooting at night. When you say night, is like pitch dark or like twilight time?
No, pitch dark.
Pitch dark. Okay. So you're using your flashlight to find them.
Find it, yeah. And then I'll also use my flashlight to help me focus. A lot of times I'll put it in my opposite hand. I'll have it like this, and I rest my camera on it as I get close. But if I'm laying on the ground, that's when I turn this one on, and I'll just set it there, and that'll allow me to get in really close.
Okay, so I just want to make sure I get this right. So you found your spider, and you are shining your light on the eyes,
yep,
as a focusing light.
Well, no, I use the light to find it. It'll reflect off the eyes. I don't just keep standing at it, but then I'll approach it. When I approach, I'll turn the side light on and place it on the ground.
Okay.
Not necessarily, because if I have, then it's the thing where the light would be too harsh in the eyes and it would reflect. So it's just to light up the area so that I can focus on it.
That's just lighting the insect from the side while you're taking a shot. And then you have your flash that's, so you got two lights basically.
Yep.
So almost like a portrait shoot of a human.
It kind of has to be. Otherwise you won't find it. Then if you don't light up the area so that you can focus, then you'll lose it and it'll go away. And like these things, their camouflage it's the insect world. That's what keeps them alive, is their camouflage. If you take your eye off it, they're gone. So you light up the area so you can focus on it. You can take a couple of shots, and then they usually scurry away.
The side light is also, I'm guessing, adding some dimension to your shot, right? Because it's
Yep.
coming from the side. How much ambient light? What's the role of ambient light here? The,
Honestly, I don't know. It's I don't know. I There's a lot of technical terms with photography that I'm not super familiar with. I know is when I get down into position and I'm ready to go, if this light is too much, I move it. I don't know what the rule is, it's just how it looks through my viewfinder as I'm coming. If it's too much, I'll lay it down, I'll turn it so that it's not necessarily on the subject. It's just mainly so I can find it through my viewfinder and be able to focus on it. If it's too strong, I move it.
what I mean by ambient light is the natural light, like how
Oh,
sunlight.
at
Like,
night, there isn't natural light at night.
but what about if you're shooting at day?
So that another thing that I use the diffuser for. So in macro photography, the sun can be extremely harsh. I'm sure it's like that with other forms of photography as well. But I use the diffuser to cast a shadow. So yes, there's sun out and it's great, but I don't want direct sunlight because beetles, spiders that have the shiny eyes, you can't really tone down a hot spot from a sun. So I'll cast a shadow and then use my flash power for the fill.
I see. Is that a sticker of a spider on the flash,
It is.
on the light?
So my buddy on Instagram makes these, and that's his Cygnus Tech. That's his logo and his thing. I bought the diffuser off of him. I've made some, but it's just he makes great ones, and it was so easy. Plus, he's a friend. I got to support him, and the logo's awesome. So I leave the sticker on there.
Yeah, and we'll link up his Instagram handle here as well.
All right, cool.
So, are there any career options in macro photography?
What do you mean?
Like, let's say somebody is interested in shooting bugs. Can they make money? Is there a path here where, like a wedding photographer, is there something that they can do to make money?
So that's such an interesting question because that's what I'm trying to do now. How can I monetize my hobby? I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out now. I know quite a few people will make calendars. They also sell prints. That's a lot of the stuff that I'm gearing up for. I now have a website where I want to have an option to be able to sell a print. But let's say you wanted, hey, listen, I like a jumping spider, but the interior color of my house is gray. I would like something blue. So okay, I can create a jumping spider with a blue background for you and kind of customize a photo for people. Like that's an option I'm trying to pursue as well. I think next season I'm also going to try to have tours. So post on Instagram or on Facebook, hey, listen, there's going to be a macro tour. Let's go on a tour and see if I can't be kind of like a tour guide and give tips and pointers as we go. I'm going to try to pursue that avenue as well. Macro photography is such a niche, and an insect macro photography is even more limiting. So it's something I'm passionate about, but I haven't figured out how I can start making money from it. That's something now. And that's the goal is I would like to try to support some of the gear, and that'd be great.
My math teacher, I used to live in Africa, a country called Malawi. My math teacher is an entomologist, and so he used to study insects
right
in Africa. And I think he will be interested in seeing this. I'm going to send this to him.
I don't know how, like, there's so many things that are so similar on insects, and to identify them, it can be like beetles. You might have to count the notches in the antenna, but there's things that you can't even, by physically looking at them, you got to look at them under a microscope to be able to identify them. So it can be a real challenge. So that's why I'm like, I get so far and I'm like, all right.
I was going to ask you, do you ever get bored of, because you're just shooting insects every day, do you ever get bored of your subject matter and you feel like, you want to shoot some other genre of photography?
I'm not bored. I'm never bored. Last winter, 2 winters ago, I was like, what do I do? I'm a macro shooter. I don't know what to do in the winter. So before I went to my Olympus system, I had an old Sony, and I had a decent lens. I was like, you know what? I like long exposures. Let me go try to do some long exposures at night. So instead of going to look for macro bugs, I work in DC, so I would go around some of the monuments and set up on a tripod and try to get long exposures of like the monument with car lights going by. Like, I really like long exposures. But then again, it was like, I'm standing still, it's cold. So that's why I started to lose interest there. The thrill of the macro season is being out, the sun's out. I usually have my kids with me. It's the thrill of the hunt. You're outdoors. It's just a great time. Otherwise, just standing there, I'm not interested in that. And that's another reason why I don't really like birding. I'm not patient enough just to stand there and wait. Jumping spiders were just like the thing that initially hooked me on macro photography. They have a special place in my heart, the jumping spider. But like I said, whatever I find, I'll shoot. Like, another thing that we do is we also rear and raise caterpillars. So butterflies are a big thing. Moths are a big thing. Like, I do that with my kids as well. So if we plant a butterfly garden in the backyard and we get caterpillars, we'll bring them inside so that the parasitic bugs don't get them. We feed them, they'll take care of them. And then when they're butterflies or moths, we'll release them. So my kids get to see the different stages of life like that. So it's never boring. It's just how you look at it.
Yeah. So, okay, let's say I'm a new photographer, and I'm somewhat interested in getting into macro photography. What should I do? What are the steps I should take to start getting into macro photography? What kind of lens should I get? Are there any books to read? Like, what should I be doing?
Well, I mean, for me, my biggest inspiration for it was Instagram. Before that, I did buy a macro lens at first, but I mean, if you're not so sure, phones nowadays have clip-on lenses that you can get. So I know a lot of people that started out with their phone and a clip-on macro lens. And if it's something the clip-on macro lens, you can probably pick up for like $80 in the US. If it's something that you like, then yeah, I definitely recommend a macro lens. But it doesn't have to be new. My cameras, I picked it up used. I actually bought it from my buddy, Brandon from Cygnus Tech. So he sold me his old camera. I bought a new macro lens for it, and that's my setup. I've had it for a couple of years now. You don't have to have the latest and greatest stuff. It's more about what you can afford. So if you have a budget, what can you afford to get? And then there's YouTube videos. I mean, if you buy a DSLR camera, it comes with an 1855, usually like a cheap kit lens. There's a $5 reverse ring that you can get off of eBay that allows you to turn the lens around. Once you turn it around, it's like looking through binoculars backwards, and it's an amazing macro lens just by reversing it. So I mean, there's things that you can do. I think first is, what is your budget? Photography is expensive, and that was my thing. Like, I had a Sony point and shoot camera that had a little macro option at first that allowed me to get close to flowers. And I was like, this is awesome. And then when I got my first DSLR, I got a used 105 macro lens. That was the first thing, and I had that for maybe like 5 years.
Which DSLR did you have?
I had a Sony Alpha 77. So I got that maybe like 10 years ago. And then I had a used Sigma 105 macro lens, and that was my thing. And at the beginning, I didn't use flash. It was all outside natural light. And that's what I struggled with, was the flash and macro. That's the game changer. So once I started doing that, I was like, okay.
If you're using your phone, you're going to miss out on the flash, right? Or Does the phone software make up for it in any way, like the deep
Well,
fusion? And
I mean, yeah, but then you can also have a light in your hand to light the area. I think mainly for the phone is like, are you interested in it? Is this something you're willing to invest money and pursue? That's a good option, because if you're not stuck with a whole system. You know, if you're just starting out and you're like, man, it's such a niche. Is this something that I'm really interested in? Get a clip-on lens for your phone and see if you like it, and see if you like getting those details. And if you're starting to get amazed by the stuff that you can see, then yeah, pursue it. Because that's what happened to me. I mean, I saw like those big eyes of the jumping spider and its hair is hanging out. I mean, if you look at my logo, it's a jumping spider. It's got the eyes, and then
yeah,
that's my logo. So I mean, when I saw that, I was like, holy cow. Or there's an ambush bug. When you get to an ambush, it looks like a dinosaur. And but it's millimeters. Like it's less than a centimeter big, but it looks like a prehistoric dinosaur. So I mean, if that stuff amazes you, by all means, go and then invest some money.
you know, when shooting portraits, they say that, you know, the larger your light source is, the softer the light's going to be on the face, right? So, you know, we use I don't know, 5 feet, 6 feet soft boxes, but the one that you're using, proportionally speaking, yeah, that's like huge for size of a small bug, right?
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about that? Is that like the optimum size for lighting bugs?
Well, it has to. It's not necessarily the optimum size. I think more importantly, it's the material and how much light passes through it. That's the key. The shape just happens to be, it's pleasing when you look at a nice round reflection in the eye. I know there's some that have bottom pieces so that it looks like a full circle, but it's the size has to do with just making sure it covers the reflector. So if the reflector hung out further, then the harsh light's going to pass. So you just want to make sure that the actual diffuser panel covers the reflector. I've made one before. So this is corrugated plastic, right? And on the inside, I just have it with some foil tape. And it can lay flat, so I can put it into a backpack, but it forms around like this. And then this is the panel that would go in front of it. So this is the one I made, but I started to have a little bit of, I wasn't super happy with it. It was mainly because I couldn't find this material. I was trying to find this material. This was from Malaysia, and my buddy sent it to me, but I couldn't find anything to replicate it. And I wanted to try to like redesign this a little bit, and I was running out of time, and Brandon came up with a new design. So I was like, all right, I'll just buy it off of him. And
what kind of business does he have, your buddy?
He's a photographer, and he's in Australia, and during lockdown, he started like mass producing these things. So he'll ship them out to you.
So he makes all kinds of photography products, or he just makes this?
The diffusers.
Diffusers. Okay.
Yeah, he was a musician that traveled around the world and then started taking pictures. So he travels all around when COVID allows it, and taking pictures of bugs. But this was something he started doing as like, okay, he's in lockdown. I'm going to start making diffusers. He does calendars as well too.
What's his name?
Brandon. Yep. Brandon, and his handle is Cygnus Tech. You know, another thing that really changed a lot of stuff for me was another thing that I bring with me on the field. Like for me, this is a must. I can't go shooting if I don't have these. And they're knee pads. So they got a hardcover. I got them from Home Depot. They're the ones that the guys that lay tile and carpet and flooring. These.
I've been looking for those actually.
Yeah, they're $15 at Home Depot. This was like one of the, other than my camera macro setup, this was the best buy I've ever had. This was a game changer for me too. When I saw somebody, I saw someone on Instagram post a picture, and I sent him a DM. I'm like, "Are you wearing knee pads?" And he was like, "Oh yeah." He's like, He's like, I'm in my 40s. It's getting, and let me tell you, putting knee pads on. People look at me so funny. I don't care. I can get down on my knees, brace myself, take a picture, and I'm up walking again. It's the
Yeah,
best.
even when shooting portraits, we are kneeling down, and I've been looking for those, so I should probably get a pair as well. um,
Game changer for me.
yeah, can imagine. Anything else that you need for macro photography?
No. I mean, what do you need? Just you need a camera to take pictures and an imagination. I mean,
What are some interesting
passionate.
subjects that you could choose other than insects?
Other than insects, reptiles. So frogs, I really like frogs. Snakes, I don't have a whole lot of exposure to snakes, but I recently found a baby one not too long ago that I was able to get a cool shot with his tongue out. But yeah, for me, because of my setup, it's more about small things. Like it's macro.
Yeah,
I can't take a picture of a bird that's far away.
right.
But it's things that are small, and if they're animals, then they got some details that I can't see. I wear glasses. My eyesight's not the best, so.
What have you learned from observing these animals up close?
Oh, that nature's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Jumping spiders are some of the best hunters. A lot of them can evaluate the situation. They can outsmart their prey. It's spectacular. You see, like you went to one picture of a beetle that you were showing. If you look at it, the guy's missing an antenna, his shell's broken, but yet they're still going on with their life, and they persevere. They're survivors. They're fighters, and like survival of the fittest. You can see it when you're looking at these creatures.
Trying to find it actually. Let's get that beetle shot. Which one were you talking about?
It's on a brown leaf with a blue background, and it's a little.
Oh yeah, I think this one, right? This guy? Oh no, this is a spider.
Yep. No, keep going. Right here on the. You just pat. Yeah, something got him, and he got away, but it was still going on about its life, like no issue.
How do you know the gender, by the way?
Certain things you can tell. Like there's things that have they're marked different. So when you look, you can see something is marked differently. A lot of times I have no idea. Spiders are kind of easy when they're pedipalps. They look like legs, but they're actually they're tiny limbs by the fangs. The males have like they're bulbous, and that's how they transfer semen. It's from the pedipalps. So a lot of spiders, the females, they're very delicate and thin, and the males are big. There's one spider that was there. They're massive. Like that guy's ready to mate.
Are there any composition guidelines for insects?
A lot of stuff still works. I mean, leading lines is great. A lot of times I have only, like for the longest time, I was only concerned about details and getting as close as possible. When I switched to Olympus, it's so light and it's so easy. It allowed me to like really focus on composition. So if I have the stick, I'll try to use the stick as like a nice leading line, or composition does play a big part in it. Absolutely. Another thing I really focused on that a lot during the post-processing. Almost all my images get cropped somehow, and if I'm cropping it in and the stick is a little flat, I can rotate it. You know, like if I do want to utilize some negative space, like if the spider's looking one way, I'll give a little bit more space on the side where like he's looking out into the distance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's stuff like that.
Would you ever crop into a bug, like cut a bug into a part? I mean, like, could you get really up close into like the head and just the face
just
part?
Have like, yeah, I mean, there's plenty of guys that do that. You have to have the magnification and the pixels to be able to do it. A lot of times, once you get so close, if you don't have the correct tools, you lose photo quality.
The lens that you have, the 60 mm, is that an f 1.8 lens?
2.8.
2.8, and that's a special macro lens, and that lets you go really up close.
Yep.
And still be able to focus, right?
And then I have a clip-on, which is it's a Raynox 250. So this has 2.5 magnification on it as well, and it just clips onto the front of my lens.
Does it affect the optical quality in any way by clipping that on?
You read about the more glass you attach, you can lose quality. There can be vignetting. I haven't discovered any of that. And if there is, I mean, I'm going to crop it out anyways. But when it gives you 2.5 times magnification, and this was like $55. So again, what can I do to increase magnification on a budget? There's other type of like magnification filter lenses. I know Nisi has a great product that you can screw it threads right onto your lens. Now this, I like this one because I can remove it. So if I get up to something and it's too big, like that beetle with the yellow background, it was probably 2-3 centimeters. It was a pretty large beetle, and it had the long antenna. It was a longhorn beetle. I took this off because I couldn't get it all in the frame with this one. But it's easy. It just clips right on and off. So this is my magnification of choice.
Being a macro photographer, you're probably known as a photographer among your friends and family. Yeah. Do people ever approach you and ask you to take shots of them? Because you're a photographer and you're going to be able to shoot
all the time.
So how does that work out? Because you're not focusing on taking people shots.
Right.
But is there anything that you can borrow from macro photography? Does it work?
It does. So that's such a good question. So right when COVID started happening, one of the things that my restaurant did was we trimmed back on like our marketing budget. So one of the things that I did was I created an Instagram account for me at work, and then I began to take pictures with my phone, and it was making little video clips or taking photos of like decorations we have or promos, and the things that would apply were lighting, but it wasn't the same. So I would try to light something up like my macro setup, and I'd have to call my friend, and I'm like, I got to take some pictures of a plate, and it's not working. And then I would get tips on lighting, like what you're saying, on how to do it. But composition wise, I could do some composition stuff with food that was similar to macro photography, but the lighting was different. I had to like try to figure that out.
What is the key to getting good at macro photography? What is so actually 2 questions here. What is the key difference between macro photography and generally other types of photography? And what is the key in becoming a good macro photographer?
Passion. I mean, is this something that you enjoy? Are you passionate about it? Are you able to go and be self-taught and to learn and to improve yourself at it? And that's for anything, in my opinion. Like if you want to be good at being a chef, what are you going to do? Are you just going to say you're a chef? You're going to go out and take classes, go to school, constantly push the envelope and try to better yourself. It's the same. Is this something that you're willing to continue learning and enjoy continuing to learn? And then, I'm sorry, what was the other one?
Well, I think you answered it. And passion. The other one was just like, what's the key difference between macro photography and generally other types of photography?
Working distance. I mean,
scale is different, I'm guessing.
Yeah, the working distance and scale. So a lot of things will affect differently. I know, like portrait photography, you were talking about the large flash. what is it bouncing off of? How are you controlling it where it bounces? It applies to light bouncing off a little bit for macro photography, and not nearly as much. It's more about like shadows. So where you're trying to bounce light to light up the whole area, I'm trying to reduce shadows in like a square inch. So it's similar, but it's mainly your working distance.
And do you use Lightroom to edit your photos?
Yeah.
Okay.
I again, I Photoshop it just seems like it's overwhelming for me. It's too big. It's too complicated. I learned everything by myself. So Lightroom for me was, I got my pictures in there and I started to do it. And then over time, and now I'm starting to learn a bit more on some shortcuts, on presets and things in Lightroom. But Lightroom's what I use.
Are you just using the basic sliders, or are you doing anything funky?
No, my stuff is all pretty basic. That's the other thing too, is I don't enjoy sitting at the computer and spending a lot of time editing. So I try to make sure I got a pretty good shot, so I don't have to do very much.
Do you have to do a lot of like dodging and burning on the insects?
I don't even know what that means.
Okay, that answers the question. Like making, just giving more contrast by brightening certain areas and darkening other areas.
I do that. Like I'll move the exposure slider a little bit.
Okay.
I'll do a little bit of contrast. A lot of like I do sharpening. If the color isn't like really bright in the background, I'll try to do some saturation sliders to really make it pop. I'm not a huge fan of like overly processed, because it doesn't look natural. If the colors are like so over the top, a lot of like HDR photos, like I'm not a huge fan of those. They're too much. So I try to make it eye-catching and appealing, but also pretty natural.
Yeah, I can tell that from your photos. It's vivid and colorful, but it looks very realistic, and it doesn't look at all unnatural.
That's the goal.
Very believable. Yeah.
That's the goal. Like that plays a lot in the things that I do.
Cool. Any advice to photographers in general who are just starting out with photography, or who are just starting out with macro photography? And I know you said passion and hunger for learning, but any other advice that you have for them?
Yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions. So many of the stuff that I learned, and the tips and the techniques I've learned, it's because I asked somebody. I would send them a DM on it. I wasn't on other platforms for social media. I was only on Instagram for the longest time, but I would send a DM to somebody and be like, hey, listen, how did you do that? How did you do that? What was your approach? I asked a lot of questions, and people ask me questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And the more I get into it, the more I realize it's a small world. The circle of people is small, but the community is amazing, and people are willing to share. It's not a trade secret. It's not copyrighted. No, because more than likely, that's how they got to where they are too, is somebody's helped them. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
That's very good advice. Cool. Thank you very much, Scott. This was very enlightening. And
thank you. It was awesome.
Yeah, I hope we can have another session, maybe observing how you actually go about shooting.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram. I'm a Macro Scott on Instagram.
Macro.Scott? Is that?
Yeah, macro.Scott. I've also got a website. It's macroscott.com.
And they can also find you at your restaurant, right?
Yeah, Mastro's. I'm also on ShotStories. That's something that I really like too. You had mentioned to me that there was some like up and coming things that were coming around.
Yeah, we have some really exciting things, and we will talk about it right after this.
Cool.